is to measure the income in countries in common units across countries instead of using exchange rates. Because, you know, if you fly from here to Delhi and you get off the plane, you can change your euros into rupees, and those rupees will go much further in India than they will go in Paris. So what the World Bank and the International Comparison Project does is spend a lot of time collecting numbers that correct for that. And it's done a new, much better round of that, the results of which were published last year. And I talked a bit about that and how credible it is, how it's much better than before, but there are still some problems with it. And I talked about the uncertainties that those numbers induce in the measurements of international poverty that are based on the dollar-to-day lines of international inequality. So those are the sort of things I've been interested in. Let me hand over to Alkira, to Sabina, who's the champion of the multidimensional. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the reasons, I think, for the expansion of work on multidimensional poverty, as they mentioned in the beginning of the day, has been that the data that we can use to look at poverty has really expanded in the past years. Most of the surveys we use now were started in the 1980s or even 1990. And so now we are able to look for many countries at different aspects of deprivation. What my paper focused on was something a bit different, which is that parallel to that, in the late 90s and early 2000s, there's also been a development on the measurement front in terms of how we can bring this data together to look at the overlapping deprivations, the things that batter poor people's lives at the same time, when their child is sick and they don't have a secure livelihood and they don't have an education to go out and read the bus sign to take their child to the doctor. So concretely, we build on one particular methodology, which I developed with James Foster, but this builds on the work of others, including François Bernino and many others in the past 10 years. What we did was work for the United Nations Development Project, UNDP Human Development Report Office, and they, together with our research center, OPHI, the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, released a multidimensional poverty index for 104 countries. It has 3 dimensions: health, education, and standard of living. It doesn't have income because we don't have data for income for the same people in those surveys. So it's meant to complement an income poverty measure. But what's new about it is that it looks at each person and how many things they are deprived in at the same time and builds a measure up from them. So not only do you know who is poor, the percentage of people who are poor in a country, but you know how they are poor. Is it mostly driven by malnutrition? Is it more by a lack of electricity or clean water or sanitation? Is it different for different ethnic groups? To give you an example, in Kenya, multidimensional poverty among the Maasai is about 96%, but among the Kikuyu or the Embu ethnic groups, it's less than 40. So there's lots of variation among poverty that we can see if we break it down. And I think one thing we then tried to do was just look at, can this complement income poverty and help people, in a sense, serve the poor better? Because that's, for all of us, I'm sure that the final aim is not just to measure poverty, but to go beyond it, and so to direct policy actions. So we tried to say that, yes, it seems to be picking up something that income poverty is not, and it also seems to be quite tangible and concrete. There's a big debate about whether it's useful to bring things together into one measure versus looking differently at malnutrition, at education, and at standard of living. And what we found, and others have found before us and showed, is just like Professor Deaton said, it's different people maybe who are educated, education poor or nutritionally poor, but some people are deprived in all of them at the same time. So having a measure that captures that a bit more directly, hopefully will add value.
Thank you very much. Michel.